Welcome back to Product Huddle, where we skip the textbook and talk about what actually moves the needle. I'm Anna, joined as always by Jeff, and today we have a really special guest, Anthony Argenziano, a founder who saw a real problem with how product managers work and decided to build a company around solving it. We're getting into the honest stuff today. The moment Anthony knew that was worth betting on, the assumptions the real users completely shattered, and why PMs are still skeptical when they hear the words AI-powered product management. We'll also get into that's been harder than expected in building the company, and we're ending with a question every PM is quietly thinking about. What should you never hand over to AI, no matter how good it gets? If you're PM, building for PMs, or just watching AI reshape how products get built, this is conversation for you. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
But before we dive in, Anthony, in your own words, tell us who you are and what you're building.
Sure. So I'm a career-long product person. I've led product and tech teams for going on about 25 years now, mostly at startups, but I also spent some time in big tech. Very early in my career, I worked for Intel, but a little bit more recently, eBay and Amazon. And, over the years, I developed a framework for building products, really from going from 0 to 1. And ultimately, that's what led me to founding Velocity. It really is kind of a culmination of my career.
Nice. Well, I'm very honored that you joined us today. And I remember when we connected on LinkedIn and when I met you, I always wanted to ask you this question, like what specific moment made you realize that this was a real problem worth building a company around?
Yeah, it honestly wasn't like there is a moment that I'll talk about in a minute, but there wasn't really a moment that I said, this is it. It was a culmination. What always surprised me is not necessarily when I went into a startup and realized, especially if they were, a little bit later stage. I guess it's not surprising that in a tech startup that they didn't have a good product management or product development process in place. But it was definitely more surprising in places like eBay and Amazon, where companies at that size and scale, some teams maybe had a great product operating model but many didn't. So like I said, it was just kind of building. And then when I decided I should build a company, I should build a product around this, if there was kind of a single moment, it was when I saw what was happening with generative AI. I said, okay, now this is the time to do this at scale. And I also went out and talked to just hundreds and hundreds of product leaders, product managers, and founders. Everybody had kind of these same problems, right? There just wasn't a good way, a good platform, a good methodology or process end to end to build products. So kind of built over time. And then I think the real moment was, a few years ago, generative AI just blowing up.
Yeah, this is a real problem. I've coached for more than a decade, and what I've seen is discovery doesn't really die because people are lazy. Product managers work hard as anybody, if not harder than anybody in the organization, but it gets squeezed out because they're spending so much time doing reactive work like stakeholder management.
For sure.
Yeah, it makes sense. And what I always I love patterns that I realize that are happening while you're even getting the idea and then building a product is at some point, you will realize that at least one of your assumptions was wrong actually about what you're building, either about users or the product itself. It doesn't really matter. So my next question would be actually what assumptions about PMs or their workflow turned out to be wrong once you had the real users?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely found a few, but the biggest one was, I had this assumption that now with generative AI maybe enabling, companies like what we do to build more of a AI powered platform. I had an assumption that PMs and product leaders would just immediately that's how we should do it, not build our own. So that was something that I was really surprised how many, and I still am, how many product people want to build their own kind of AI powered PM stack, for lack of a better word, and also that want to jump straight to vibe coding. I didn't think that PMs would leverage tools like that, but it really surprised me. that you take a problem that existed, and Jeff, this is what you talked about, right? Just not having time to do discovery. You're dealing with stakeholder requests. You're inundated with this. I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe they'll see how AI can make the discovery process and some of the foundational stuff better. And again, either so many PMs jumping straight to vibe coding, skipping discovery even more, and or even trying to build their own stack. I mean, I always use the analogy, accountants and CFOs don't build their own, QuickBooks or other tools, and salespeople aren't building their own CRMs, but product people, just because maybe you have the skill set and can build your own tool stack, I just don't understand why so many are doing that. It's expensive to build and maintain, and models are changing and all of that. So, kind of the jump to using AI to build stacks and going straight to vibe coding, that was, something that was surprising to me.
Yeah, but it's not terribly surprising. People are builders by nature, right? And, we look at big companies. Some of them buy off the rack software. But a lot of people have built their careers around building custom programs for managing invoicing or inventory or any of those things. And so to me, it seems like it's just really an extension of that process. The time from idea to prototype to something demoable has collapsed. I think that it's reset all those expectations. Seeing AI in this mode as a collaborator and not a replacement, I think is an important piece of this, because I think a lot of people are just assuming that it's replacing them. I'm going to lose my job to AI, but realistically, I don't see that being the case. It's going to create an opportunity to collaborate with and to do higher leverage work. So I don't know, that's what I've seen.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, I think leveraging AI to build products, I think is, I think that's where it's heading. I think that's very smart. I just, and I totally get your point around the, as product people, we're builders, right? You want to build, but building the tool set instead of the solution, I guess was a little surprising. But to your point, we're builders. So, so maybe,
right.
Yeah.
So you've kind of answered, or at least touched on this next question, but when PMs hear AI-powered product management, it sounds like they are reacting with, I'm building in-house a lot of times, but what is their reaction and how do they have to engage with it? What has to happen before they'll trust it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And that's kind of the flip side, right? There, so when I'm out there talking to product people, again, I hear a lot, oh, we're trying to build our own, tool stack. But then the other, and I think that's pretty easy for us, or easier for us to get past. But then the very next one is really around trust. It's kind of split 50-50. Some people are like, no, I get it, I'm all in. And then the other half, it's, for instance, on our platform, when you sign up and you kind of get onboarded, the very first thing we do is we run a series of agents that does discovery and kind of starts to build out your strategy. And there is some trust factor there often around, it was such a simple prompt. You don't know anything about us, right? And it's not that the data that comes out isn't pretty well aligned and accurate to what they need. There's just this disbelief of, how did you do that? And what we found is the way we get through that trust factor is we've more recently added the ability to say, okay, we're going to run this agent workflow to do discovery and strategy and build this all out. If you have existing documentation you want to upload as part of that process, you can now do that. And it's interesting that even as good as the output is, the same basic output, without them uploading their documentation, there's some trust concerns. And even if the output is exactly the same or nearly the same, just the fact that they uploaded their data just increases that trust factor. I mean, significantly. Another little surprise along the way, because if the output was significantly different, that makes sense, but it could be pretty much the same. We still get to the same place. But it's like, because I was able to give you my data, the time that I put in, now I trust it much more. So that's something interesting.
Definitely see that. It's interesting. Yeah, I also think that trust builds when you give them back something concrete that is something of value, and they can look at it and say, this is something useful. One of the things that I use my AI for is getting past that blank page, getting that fast path to the first draft of a deliverable. Doesn't mean that I'm signing off on the output, but it's getting the gears going, getting me started. But the flip side of that is the minute that AI tools give me something that is obviously wrong, it's I think a huge setback in that trust building process. So trust really comes from validated outputs, not just fast outputs.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, the whole, our whole premise or thesis is, yeah, we want to help you build faster, but build the right product, right? At its core, the problem we're solving is as an industry, we keep building features and products that people don't use or don't need because we think it was good, right? So I agree completely that, it's the right thing, right? It's outcome and value versus output.
One of the things, so I looked at your website, the investor deck, I think that you recently published. And one of the things that struck me about it was the emphasis around context and the fact, because I think it's the single most important thing, that getting useful results from an AI tool requires. And it looks to me, going through kind of what you're building, that you're pulling in a lot of what I'll just call digital context. And that's tremendously useful. The piece that I think is missing, and the role that I think there's still a place for the PM in here, is the analog contexts being, and just kind of, we'll just call it instinct.
For sure. Yeah. So look, when we think of context, and again, I'm a firm believer that, that is kind of the bottleneck or the challenge now. I mean, we haven't had a coding problem, writing software. We haven't had a problem there or a challenge there for a while, right? And it just keeps getting easier and easier to write software or to generate software. That is not the problem. It is the context or the what. And that's why it's such a big focus of ours. And while we use our agent to generate a lot of that context, the first thing we say to do every time I'll just say kind of output or artifacts are generated by our agent is we want a human, a PM, to go in and review and refine that. Because any data that lives on our platform is context. So initially, that's agent generated, that's digital. But now I, as the PM who is using this platform, who understands this industry well, and our users that, call it that, instinct. I think it's learned, right? It's this learned set of data. But now I'm going to go in and review and refine that data. And that's just making that context even better. It's adding to it. It's adding the human element. And then we continue to collect context through customer feedback. You can upload a customer interview, look at your product analytics data, any valid customer or product or industry data. We just need to get that into our platform. And then the agent is processing that. It's pulling insights out of that. It's presenting it to the user and say, we found this. Do you want to now build an initiative from this so you can go do this? So the context starts, through the agent, but then it just continues through the human and any other data that you upload.
Right.
Because I couldn't agree more, right? We don't say, agent's going to do everything, AI is going to generate everything, and you're just going to go take it and do. Like, no, you need to put your spin on that.
Yeah. So nicely said. Just kind of like a reminder also, like why we also wanted you as our first guest in our podcast is not only that you build a product for PMs, but you had to be a PM to build that, but also you're a CEO and a founder. So you had to take multiple roles, even though like PM is already like multiple roles in one, but then we had to add some other roles within yourself to actually like start a company and so on. which also you need to have other skills and experiences, or you had to earn that experience along the way. And since some of our listeners are not only PMs, but are founders or founders that want to be one day, my question would be focused on what's been harder than expected in building this company. If we're talking about phases, the discovery phase, the focus phase, or distribution phase?
Yeah, I mean, none of them were easy, but for us, it's been distribution. We came out of the gates with a kind of a product-led growth, PLG approach, really driving users to sign up for the trial, have that great experience, convert to paid. And I never underestimated it. I never thought it was going to be easy, but just was reminded just how hard that is. Took us a while to really get that initial onboarding, getting to the wow moment. It took us a while I won't even say to nail that, because I'm not going to say we've nailed it yet, but to make it to where it was much better than it was initially. We thought, oh yeah, we have a pretty good onboarding process. And then you quickly realize, okay, we didn't. So that's been,
Yeah.
That's very, I think.
Most founders, that's exactly what they underestimate is distribution. How hard it is to getting the onesie twosies out there is one thing. Getting a steady stream of them, getting a sales force established, building is the fun part. Changing a workflow that people have been using for years is really where the battles are won and lost. So that's I think where it frequently breaks for people.
yeah. And look, I'm perfectly, being transparent about this. Some of this is also a skill set. I always thought I was pretty good at selling, because as a product person, I've gone with the sales team, with salespeople. I've gone into deals. I've helped push things along. And I think maybe we fool ourselves into thinking as product people, yeah, we could sell. Like, I'm the closer, right? They bring me in at a big deal where they need to close. And that's just such a tiny part of the sales cycle. And again, I just realized that, I needed to really sharpen my skills around selling.
Some of the best product managers I've ever worked with had some period of time where they did some either sales or some kind of customer facing role, because I think it prepares you to have that dialogue with customers. And it's easy for PMs to sit in their cubicle or to sit in their home office and think that they have it all figured out and ship something and they've never engaged with a customer. You aren't selling until you've heard the first no. Until then, you're an order taker.
Yeah. Yeah. And, as product people, we're often, we're evangelists, right? We're out there evangelizing. And again, I think coming to that point of until you hear no, right? Evangelizing solution, even if you are getting out there and you're talking to customers and you're going to industry events. I mean, I've done all of that, right? Evangelizing is not selling, right? To your point, you don't really hear a no when you're evangelizing. Maybe someone's not as interested, or maybe they're not bought in, but you don't really hear that no. And I couldn't agree more. You're not a salesperson till you hear that first no.
Yeah. So relatable.
What is, as we start to engage with these AI-based product management tools, what is something that the PM should never outsource to AI, no matter how good it gets?
Yeah, another great question. I think, and maybe this sounds pretty high level and simplistic, but I think it's super important, is AI should never make the final decision. It could automate the things, do the heavy lifting, do all of this, generate insights, tell you should build this. But I don't believe AI should ever make the final decision, even years from now when it's advanced beyond. I mean, it feels, and this is also kind of maybe a more broader question than just product management, but taking the human out of the final decision, and especially where we are now in product management. Yeah, I think that's something it shouldn't do. Help you come up with ideas, help you automate things, but not make that final decision. That should be a human, and in this case, a PM.
What do you think, Anna?
I totally agree. I couldn't agree more. Suggestions, yes. Final decision, no. And like Anthony said, even like after a few years of development in AI, I wouldn't trust it. So as far as we can take a human to decide to make a final decision, I think we should do it that way.
And I'm going to throw one more thing in there. I think a lot of what I do as a product person is stakeholder management. I'm the hub of a wheel of all these different groups, and I'm the communication hub, working with legal, working with sales, working with support. Being in the room and managing those stakeholders should, in my opinion, always be a PM role. Understanding who's raising a real issue and who's just office politics. I think that nuance, again, I'll come back to the word instinct about what the real problem is and who the people are to solve them. There's just so much subtle context that is, again, that analog context that comes from managing stakeholders that's so difficult to capture the nuance. Even if you have a transcript, you don't get the side-eye glance that somebody gave you in the middle of the meeting, or the eyes rolling, or any of those things. We may get there someday, but we're not there in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of think, kind of tie this back to, pretty sure it was Ben Horowitz that made that quote a while back of that the product manager is the CEO of the product, right? And look, maybe in some cases as product people, we have egos. Maybe we took it a little bit too far. But I don't know if he was really pressing it on where things were going or a coincidence. But as more and more of the product development process gets automated and is done by AI, when there are less and less humans, and I think no matter what, I think it's safe to say, the kind of that 8 to 10 person, the pizza team, right? Pizza size team in Scrum and Agile. I think we have to accept that is going away. I mean, at some point soon, I just don't think there'll be these 8 to 10 person product development teams. But no matter how small it gets, I do firmly believe it's going to be the PM that is going to lead that team, whether it's a team of one human and a bunch of AI agents, or, some smaller team. And again, I think, Jeff, that comes back to, for many of the reasons you said, right? There will still be stakeholders to manage. There will still be nuance and things, and who better than the PM to manage that?
Absolutely. So besides changing the size of the pizza order or shifting them from large pizzas to personal pan pizzas, how is AI changing PM and product development work more broadly?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly what it can do, what it is doing, what it does best. To me, I look at it as there's always going to be data analysis, and I'll just call it heavy lifting, right? And that's where AI just shines, right? I mean, why spend time as a human digging through product analytics data and customer interviews and all of that, when just pop it in AI and say, fine, maybe spit out a transcript. But again, then you still have to read through that whole thing, go and find trends, find patterns, and then let me use my expertise to pick that off. So I think AI is and will just continue to get better and better around that. I mean, look, you can't stop progress, right? AI is going to continue to write code and do a better job of that. So again, that's why I feel like the PM being the conductor of this product development orchestra, I think that's where it's heading. And I think that's probably the best use of it. I don't love that process is going to start to move humans out of that, right? But again, I just think that's where it's headed, but I don't think it will. And I definitely don't think it should remove all humans. Maybe, again, I see it's either the PM and AI, right? Or maybe it's the trio, right? The PM, the designer, and a single engineer, kind of a lead engineer that are leading this kind of orchestration of AI. But that's certainly, I think those are the things that AI does best, and where it probably should be leveraged.
Yeah, I mean, we're building faster, but in many respects, the cost of building the wrong thing has never been higher. So back to discovery, making sure that we're building the right thing, making sure that we have the feedback loops with sales or directly with customers, and to care or directly again with customers, to be able to capture that information and quickly adjust and make sure that we're building a sellable product instead of a minimum viable product, because we want a lot of times that first iteration, especially if you haven't engaged with customers, is from the mind of the PM and maybe the stakeholders. And it's not until you again get back to that person who's going to cut you a check or give you a credit card do you find out that you don't have a sellable product yet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for us, I go back to the core problem that, that we were built to solve. And that is 75% of all new software products fail. And that's very well accepted at this point. There's a ton of great studies on it. You'll see between 75 and 90%. And, and by the way, in an industry that globally we spend somewhere between $1 and $4 trillion, you see different estimates, but it's between $1 and $4 trillion annually with the 75%, excuse me, plus failure rate. It's crazy, right? But the other important stat is 80% of all new features in software are rarely or never used. You look at those two things and say, well, why is that? And again, it's what you said, Jeff. We're just building the wrong things. How AI is being leveraged today in product development is just making that worse. If you're jumping to vibe coding without doing good discovery, good product management work, yeah, you're just going to accelerate that and make the problem worse. So that's where I say, right, like vibe coding, skipping product discovery because you can build faster with AI. That's just a bad use of AI. But automating the hard stuff, the data analysis, automate discovery, and then put your human expertise on top of it. So I think it's just discovery and context are now more important than they've ever been.
Love that. Yeah, did you
Yeah.
have anything?
I just loved because this is the first time that I actually heard that someone is assuming that in the future the designers would actually stay in the team, but because it's harder to replace them, right? But maybe the developers would be the one either trying to transition in some of the like other parts of technology, probably ML or something related, so they can stay in the game. So I would definitely agree because as we all were thinking about like how will the future look like. So I would definitely agree. PM, a designer, maybe even a marketer, data analytics, and then data science. So will that be like one technical person that will be like a tech lead or someone making decisions for technology stack, or maybe some other, depending on what kind of product it is. But anyways, that was like my thinking. So I'm really glad that I heard someone else actually finally saying for designers that they will stay in the game, because they were the ones who were afraid the most, I would say. And in my experience, oftentimes designers are not that cherished in that whole process. And now I think they will actually take the better half of this technology advancement.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think where, AI generating, if you think of a designer, right? A great designer is not just UI, it's UI and UX. AI is doing a pretty good job of UI. I don't think it's doing anywhere near as good as the best UI designers, human UI designers, but I think it's doing a good job, and I could see that continuing to get better. But the UX side of that, I mean, more broadly, getting down to how many clicks and, just all of those things that really great UX designers have so much insight into that. And again, it's one of those things where every time I think, yeah, I know UI, UX really well, then I sit down with just an amazing designer. And I'm like, man, I didn't even think of that, right? Like,
Yeah.
as a career-long product person. So I think maybe a contrarian view here to what most people think. I think the three of us are pretty well aligned on this, but I think human interaction and humans continue to be part of the key roles, ironically, is going to become a differentiator as more and more gets automated, right? We all know the automated voice, when you call customer support, right? Like that's been around, well before AI, right? It's been around for years. And I'm sure younger generations don't mind it as much as, maybe the older generations do, but it's the punchline in a joke. Well, imagine if, as the entire, again, I don't think SaaS is going away and completely 100% replaced by AI, but there is going to be a shift. It's just a matter of how big. Well, forget in our personal lives, just think of doing business, right? If you have the equivalent of press 1 for this, press 2 for that, because that's what it's going to be if we overly leverage AI and have AI doing everything. So then all of a sudden there's a chance to keep a human more in the mix could become a differentiator.
Yeah.
But still
Exactly.
leveraging AI. I mean, I'm not anti-AI. I'm anti-AI for I guess is a good way to say it.
I think there's going to always be, hopefully, always be a room for authenticity, and I don't know that you necessarily get that from an AI agent. And there's always going to be room for life experiences. One of the most important things that I always coach my PMs about is go out and get life experiences, because those give you frameworks and build your empathy. And there are all these things that then we have to go teach the AI how to do, but it comes from our lived experience.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to replace the creativity, the empathy, and that connection that human really gives you and can understand. Because in the end, the users will, for a long time, be just humans, and understanding how they think, what they want, what they look for, what is their problem. In the end, human will be the one to understand that better, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. I recently was listening to a podcast, and I like the way Reid Hoffman described this, right? He was talking about medicine and doctors. And he said, if you think about it, the best, most experienced doctors have this database in their head of every condition and diagnosis and look, AI can just do that better than the best doctors in the world, right? And do it faster and better. They'll have this complete data set of every condition that's ever been diagnosed, every symptom and how those link together. But it doesn't have bedside manner, right? It doesn't have, it hasn't actually done those things. So again, it just gets to leveraging AI, right? There's things that it is amazing at, that it'll do better than humans. But empathy, like the bedside manner, the empathy and whatever your role is. So yeah, I'm still pretty hopeful that we don't have this, the machines take over the world, we're thinking about it more broadly. But again, for us, it's very existential in our roles and what we do, being product people, being product managers. And again, I just think as the hype wears down, what will stand out is the best use of AI, but coupled with humans, in this case, PMs.
Absolutely. Well, Anthony, this has been exactly the kind of conversation we were hoping to have with our first guest. So thank you for filling that slot and doing a great job. We built this show for this kind of real problems, real stakes, no bullshit. Anyone who wants to dig into Velocity will have links in the show notes. So
yeah, thank you so much, Anthony, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I mean, it's been a great. Would love to, I think we should have more of these. So I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you so much. But yes, as Jeff said, we will link in our notes for Velocity, and also you can find us on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube as always. Links will also be in the description. So follow us so you don't miss the next one.
And remember, good product managers don't skip discovery.
They just finally have a faster way to do it.
See you next time.
See you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.